Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with modern jazz pianist, vocalist, and composer Peter Eldridge. He grew up in New Jersey and is on the heels of promoting his latest 2016 album, DIssapearing Day. Peter is a founding member of the internationally acclaimed jazz vocal group New York Voices. In more than 20 years of doing his jazz thing, he's released 4 solo albums and he's logged some quality jazz mileage. So get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Thanks, Peter, for taking some time out for me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off here, and your latest album, DIssapearing Day. Talk to me about this album and how you feel about it. Kind of take me into the studio and let me know what happened with this.
It all began, probably a good couple of years ago. I had been performing both with my trio, which consists of Matt Aronoff on bass and Ben Whitman on drums and myself on piano and singing. And we had, been doing some gigs together and developing some arrangements of things. And then Matt and I also have a duo called Foolish Hearts. And so between those two bands, a lot of either original tunes or arrangements of other people's tunes kind of came to be, and we went into a studio in Paramus, New Jersey, the studio, a Tom Tedesco studio, and just recorded a bunch of stuff with the three of us. And we did I think we did a day in January, just with the nature of that I'm not a New Yorker anymore, and our three individual schedules can be pretty nuts. We did a day in January, and then we did another day in the studio in June, and got a bunch of songs recorded as possibilities for a new album. And then Ben Whitman and I, we've been co-producing albums for me, for forever. And I just love the way. I love working with Ben. We think so similarly in terms of kind of aesthetically what we're looking for each track, and we just kind of went through all the tunes and picked the ones that just felt that like they'd be an interesting and pretty varied, but yet we were hoping it's kind of a ride. There's a bunch of different stuff on the album, but we're hoping that the basis of the trio and is kind of the through line with the project, and then we added what we thought were the appropriate bells and whistles afterwards, between guest guitar players and background vocalists and string players, and we had Anat Cohen come in and do some stuff on one of the tunes. So it was a real it went over a course of a long period of time, just because I teach now full time at Berkeley in Boston, and I don't live in New York anymore. So I would just come down for weekends, and we go, okay, this weekend we're doing guitar overdubs, and next weekend we're doing, and then in a month I'd come back down and we do background vocals, and so it depended on who was in town, and all that kind of stuff. So it took a while, only because I wasn't local anymore, and but it was really fun, and we I could live in the studio. It's the most fun thing in the world to me, and so it was. They say that the expression labor of love, but it really was.
So let's take, from the hyper-local, let's go to the beginnings of your life and how this love affair with jazz, so to speak, began. Talk to me about where you were born and raised and how you did actually get very interested in jazz.
Well, I really have probably my parents to thank for that. They would listen to a lot of the great singers, Nat King Cole, and they were listening to like early Peggy Lee and Joe Stafford and Mel Torme and all Joe Williams. That music was playing in the household when I was a kid, and they listened to a lot of big band music and a lot of stuff. They listened to, I think, my dad really loved Brazilian music like Jobim, when in the late 60s that was sort of very fashionable, and so I don't know. And then I was sort of the I was sort of the mistake of the family. So I have a much older brother and sister, and they both turned me on to more my other loves, which is Joni Mitchell and Stevie Wonder and Steely Dan and the Beatles and stuff. So it was a rich household of music, and I developed a love of all different kinds of stuff, And as I got, into high school and college, I really was finding jazz to be that. There was all this extra information and stuff to listen to, harmonically and rhythmically, and it just felt so rich, and I was so intrigued by kind of the all the layers of things going on, the role of the rhythm section and the bass player and the drummer and all that stuff. I just really got my wheels turning, and so I was a piano player first, most definitely. I didn't really start singing till, after high school and into college, and so I wasn't a very good jazz pianist, but I tried, and then over the course of time, just kind of a learn by doing situation, my jazz playing improved, and then I really started singing. The fear of singing, which was pretty large, slowly went away, and that was around the same time that New York Voices got started. So I grew up in Jersey. We moved around a lot. I grew up in New Jersey, outside of Manhattan, and we lived there for a bunch of years, and then moved to Colorado, and then we moved to Pennsylvania, and then Boston. So moved around quite a bit, and went to school in Ithaca, New York, at Ithaca College, and that's where New York Voices met, and that's how that all came to be as well.
Well, that's gone on pretty well. I mean, you've played with New York Voices. You've been at Carnegie Hall. You've been at the Kennedy Center. Talk to me about your association with New York Voices and how you feel about it.
Well, we're hitting like, I mean, we're almost at 30 years now, which is just bizarre. When you start talking about numbers like that. We met in school. We were part of a group that was invited over to Europe to do the jazz festivals, Montreux and North Sea, and we had such a great time doing it, and the response seemed really strong that Darman and I really talked about, well, what if we really tried to do this? What if we really, moved to New York and started playing the clubs and doing all that stuff? And this is, 1988, 1989, something like that. And that's what we did. And Kim Nazarian was also in that initial group, and Caprice Fox were all. And when we moved to the city, and we wanted one more voice for the band, and we met Sarah Krieger in New York, and so that was the initial 3 women and 2 men version of New York Voices, and then a couple of personnel changes, and then we met Lauren Kinnan in 1992, and when Sarah wanted to do some more solo stuff, and then Caprice Fox was, I think, getting a little burnt out on being on the road all the time, and so instead of finding a replacement for Caprice, the group just became a quartet. So it's been a quartet for 20 of those 30 years, and it's been the same people since then. And we just we work really hard. There's always been a big educational component to what New York Voices does. We don't just go to a college and do a concert. We go to a college and work with their various groups, whether it's instrumental or vocal, and do a lot of master classes and clinics and stuff, and then we'll do a concert in the evening. So we really kind of, the group does a pretty mean master class, and we each individually focus on different topics, whether it's vocal technique or songwriting or arranging or improvisation. And we also have a camp that every summer that is now back at Ithaca College at our alma mater, and it's a pretty great week. I think people really lives are rocked. I think coming to the camp, there's just a lot of information, and it's really fun. It's very intense, and it's each day is very full, but people just seem to really love it, and a lot of people come back every year. So and it's just been, we've always been, kind of road warriors and hardworking people. There's no denying the work ethic in the group. I think people really relate to that, whether they really sing or whether they sing in the shower. Just that idea of harmonies and voices joining is both it's a beautiful sound, it's an emotional sound, and we try to connect vocal jazz can sometimes get a bum rap for being sort of light and homogeneous, and we really try to make what we do, have both, we think of ourselves as like a horn section, and we try to sing like that a lot of the time, and go for the character in each voice and how we kind of think of ourselves almost like, the four brothers in Woody Herman's, big band. It's like four very individual sounds that come together and make this other sound, and have always really liked that part of it, and I'm, very grateful to have been part of it for this long.
Well, speaking of your career, over 20 plus years, this is your fifth album that came out this year. How do you feel about your career up to this point?
I think like anybody, you always hope, for more, more. I'd love to do more work on my own, in addition to what the Voices, the Voices schedule is. I'm really grateful for, I get to do a lot of great concerts either on my own or with New York Voices. I'm also part of another group called Moss that is with Luciana Souza and Kate McGarry and Theo Bluckman and Lauren Kinnan, who's also New York Voices. That's been together, and there's talk of that group coming back together again. It's so different from New York Voices. It's about, and that's the fun of it. It's a whole other kind of, it's a little more contemporary and more original compositions, and it just kind of sits in a totally different place. It's tough out there, and I think you have to be just really appreciative of what comes your way whenever that happens.
So, the other part of you as a composer is some of your compositions have been up for awards. One was the winner of the 2004 Grammy Award for Best Jazz Vocal Album. I want to know this. I don't want to know your favorite award, but what award have you received in your life that surprised you the most?
Oh, wow. Wow, I don't even know I truly don't know how to answer that. I will say, I don't know, maybe because it's the most recent, but I made a few Best of the Year lists with Disappearing Day, with the new album this year, and that was really nice. Downbeat and Jazzes and all these different publications and online groups gave Disappearing Day a Best of the Year. So I think that was pretty cool, and also because it's your own thing, it's your own tunes, it's your own arrangements. It does make it special. It does make it meaningful to when it's your own stuff and kind of your own vision of what you think good music is. So that was nice. That was a nice. It was better than a kick in the head, as my father used to say. So I appreciated that. Just playing Carnegie, the first time we played Carnegie Hall, we did the double bill with Take Six, New York Voices. It was kind of the big debut for both groups. Both groups had kind of gotten on the scene around the same time, and both groups did a night at Carnegie Hall, and it was. We kind of thought we'd be walking out in front of Take Six's audience, and that they'd be like, okay, that's cool, but now let's bring the guys out. And it wasn't like that at all. I think the first album was getting some really nice airplay, both on jazz radio and also on the kind of the more, poppy jazz radio stations. And so I think people were intrigued by both groups at that time. And it just felt like, that walking out on that stage, it's like what people say. It's just like there's just nothing like it. It's just sort of amazing, So that was a big, not an award specifically, but certainly a moment you never forget.
In the annals of watching live jazz, what's one of the best live jazz shows you've ever been privy to? Wow,
I loved, just recently I saw, this is maybe a little off the beaten path, but I saw Kate McGarry and Keith Gans just do a duo set at Scullers, which I just thought was absolutely transcendent. I just thought it was just amazing. And I remember back in the day seeing Cedar Walton and Billy Higgins, do that Eastern Rebellion group that Cedar had for a while. I saw them years ago when I was and that was a very, I just remember going, wow, now I understand. Yeah, I was pretty young, and I remember thinking, oh, that's why, that's the role of the bass player, and that's the role of the drummer, and it really helped me kind of figure out, what each member of the quartet or the quintet, what their role was and how they played off each other. It was pretty awesome. So those are two that come to mind immediately. We saw the Voices opened up for Shirley Horn in Vienna, a number of years ago, but Shirley was definitely, unfortunately, just really overwhelmed by diabetes at that point and was not able to play piano for herself. But she sat there in a wheelchair in this huge opera house in Vienna singing "Here's to Life," and that was another moment. Just like, okay, I will never forget this ever. And I think she died fairly soon after that. It was towards the end of her life. But there's lots of moments like that. Bobby McFerrin came up and joined New York Voices at the North Sea Jazz Festival when we were very new to the scene, and we had to pretend that it wasn't the coolest thing ever to have Bobby McFerrin come up and join you on stage and just pretend like, oh yeah, we this happens to us all the time. When meanwhile we were all just freaking out, and it was very, very exciting. So there's lots of those. There's lots of those.
Why do you love jazz?
Well, it kind of goes back to what I said before. I'm a big pop music fan too. I mean, I can't deny that, and I grew up being kind of a pop kid as much as, and then I think because of that, I started listening to more adventurous pop people, and which led me into jazz, which led me into things that are more, harmonically rich and rhythmically different, and it's there's just so much to sink your teeth into. It's both joyous and it can be complex, but not in an inaccessible sort of way. It's just there's just like it's the best of everything, harmonically, rhythmically, melodically. The joy of improvisation, which I in my own journey, I'm in a group that with Darwin Meter, who I think is one of the great improvisers out there, and it took me a long time to go, okay, well, Darwin's the improviser, I'll be the other guy, and just in the last, really, as I'm embarrassed to say, in the last few years, I've kind of those voices that go, why are you improvising? It should be somebody else who does it better, kind of went away, and I'm really enjoying that aspect of jazz as well, really for the first time, and in my playing too. On Disappearing Day, I take 2 piano solos, which was like which was a really big deal for me, and I'm not embarrassed listening to them. I'm like, that's cool, I like that. So we all have our own little mountains to climb, and the art of improvisation or the fear of it was certainly big for me, and I'm grateful to say it's not as it's more fun now, and I have more tricks on my sleeve or more information that I know what how to improvise much and feel more comfortable with it than I have in a long time.
So of all the fans that you've played for over the years, what's one of the nicest things that anybody has ever said to you about your music?
Well, but I think when they said, I think one of my favorite things was they said your music is really, it can be sophisticated and it's not simple music, but they said, but there's something about it that feels very universal, and lyrically your music feels very universal. You touch upon things that people really relate to, and I really appreciate. I loved hearing that. That it's not just it reaches people. You always want, at least for me, I think I don't want to do music just for my own gratification. You hope you can touch people with something you sing or say or a lyric that you've written, and you want to move things forward, in some respect, emotionally for people or whatever, and whenever there's some a comment back that has to do with something like that, I'm always really grateful.
So let me ask you this. Everything's going to boil down to this question. Everyone has a version of who you are, your family, your friends, business associates. But who do you think you are? When you wake up and you face the world, who do you personally think you are?
I think I mean well, most definitely. I think I think I have others I think of others a lot more than I think of myself, and I like to think that's why I like to think I'm a pretty good teacher, and I think that's one of the reasons why. I get the fear of life, and I get why life can be really hard sometimes, and I think I do try to help life not be so hard for others, and in doing so, I think it makes it easier for me too. And I grew up being sort of this. I came from a family where it was sort of a great thing to be funny and on and not theatrical, but just to entertain. And it's taken me a long time to kind of find my peace with that, and just say, well, being myself is really enough, and you don't have to be more than that. That hopefully that's the real person, and that's what people want to see. And hopefully, and I hope in all of that, the music I write represents that.
Perfect. That's a great way to wrap everything up. Peter, thank you for reaching out and allowing me to interview you, and thanks for your time and your music. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Joe. Hope to run into you one of these days.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New Jersey, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Peter for his time and all that music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or visit neonjazz@youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.